I'm only out to some of my friends and not out to my family yet, so I'd rather not reveal my whole face.
20-year-old Sharon Lai is like many LGBT youth discovering their sexuality. Finding LGBT social spaces can still be difficult in Sydney.
There's not enough queer community groups, there's not enough queer community support. There needs to be much more.
The Australian Health Directory lists most LGBT support and social networks centered in the CBD area, which makes access difficult for those like Ms. Lai who live outside the CBD.
It's just important to know that there are people out there like you, and it's just nice to have friends as a support group because, family's not always supportive.
Access to these social spaces is important for LGBT mental health. A recent study conducted by University of Cambridge, LGBT youth are more likely to commit self-harm and suicide. Mental issues have also plagued Ms. Lai.
In high school, I was just questioning myself, but it never actually occurred to me that I was lesbian. And I also come from a very conservative Christian family, so I felt it was just a range of mental issues that were bothering me, so like anxiety and depression.
To socially cope, many LGBT youth hit the gay clubbing scene, but the clubbing environment is not always psychologically healthy for those struggling with sexuality.
You're not there to meet new people. You're not there to meet new friends. You're not there to, talk about common interests. You're there just to hook up. And I think that's the difference. Having gay clubs is good, but you also need gay social events where you can just hang around and meet people.
This is the aim of Jack London, who heads nonprofit underground collective Chaos Syndicate.
It's just small, creative things like that which we really like to do. But also every now and then we like to do the big party for a couple thousand people. And so for me personally, it's important that we have these very, very cheap or free spaces for people to socialise. A lot of the gay and lesbian bar scene locks young people out, either because they look different or because they can't afford to drink there.
In a report by Sydney Morning Herald, with new lockout laws, underground parties are gaining popularity in Sydney, especially among LGBT youth. For many, it fosters a social environment to interact and connect with others. Mr. London has seen the underground help LGBT youth psychologically.
I've had a few people come up to me and say that, it's sort of made coming out a bit easier. Just having the social support group, which they otherwise wouldn't have had.
Claudia Graneman, who heads Soho nightclub and various King's Cross events, also sees this growing trend.
They're probably more of a niche for the homosexuals because there's not as many sort of queer clubs around that really gives them an environment that they can be comfortable in, that they don't have to worry about being judged or tormented by just people in Sydney, because people still are very judgmental.
And has witnessed anti-gay incidents in nightclubs that can contribute to mental stress in LGBT youth.
We've seen fights where people are yelling derogatory names that are always really directed at the homosexuals. If one guy suspects another guy of being gay and is really judgmental about it, there's always that stigma attached to it.
According to Rainbow Army leader Viva LaBang, the gay clubbing scene is changing.
The scene itself, it seems to be dying. Oxford Street's not what it was, the clubs aren't what it was. Now it seems to be more commercial based.
Club commercialization also contributes to an unhealthy social environment for those coping with sexuality like Ms. Lai.
Clubbing environment is actually quite an awful environment. It's loud, it's dark. There's a lot of pressure to fit into a particular type, and so people get nervous and they drink more. The whole exercise is designed to get people to buy more drinks.
The whole aim of the club is to make people have a good time. They spend more money, more revenue for the club.
The rise of underground parties also brings concerns over inadequate security and unregulated drinking. Sidebar Club manager Andy Cohen thinks that LGBT youth would be safer in a controlled club environment.
if someone's on the fence and they're not sure whether they're going to want to go out to a bar or a warehouse party, they might nowadays choose a warehouse party because there's no restrictions. We're implementing responsible service of alcohol, so for a young 18, 19-year-old first-time partier to be partying, to go into a bar and drink and socialise in a bar, it is generally a much safer and more controlled environment.
Mr. London disagrees, saying a BYO venue lessens the social pressure on LGBT youth.
When people are in a BYO venue, a lot of that pressure's off because nobody's trying to sell any more alcohol.
But according to the LGBT community, the underground is doing more psychological good than harm.
Things like this are very important because it gives you access to other like-minded people, especially those of the underage gay community, the teenagers that are coming out. Like, they can't go to bars or clubs and there's not much for them, and to see a safe environment like this with many different people that are accepting and open-minded, and that's something that's greatly needed.
Wendy Wong reporting for UTS Journalism.